Bagaimana jika kamu dapat menjadi bagian dari masa depan? Ikut menjelajahi Meta-Mesta. Merasakan mimpimu jadi nyata di kampus pionir pendidikan tinggi di Indonesia. Memastikan potensi dan mimpimu dilukis di kanvas yang tepat. Untuk mengeksplorasi ilmu pengetahuan dan menikmati petualangan kolaborasi bersama ilmuwan dunia. Menjadi tempatmu mendalami disiplin ilmu pilihan dalam komitmen kebangsaan dan keislaman. Untuk berinovasi dan memberikan sumbangsi bagi kemajuan negeri. Perjalanan mimpi menjadi begitu menarik, meskipun kadang turun naik. Namun di tempat yang tepat, mimpi dan cita-citamu dipupuk dan dirawat, menjadi pasar bagi ide-ide besar untuk mendesain masa depan. Setiap orang memulai dari masing-masing titik. Dan di Universitas Islam Indonesia, kamu akan temukan jalan yang terbaik.
Yogyakarta merupakan daerah istimewa di mana budaya, pengetahuan, dan kekayaan alam saling bersanding dalam harmoni. Daerah yang penuh akan nilai sejarah dan peradaban panjang, berkembang dan membentuk suatu ciri khas yang tiada duanya. Di tengah daerah yang kaya akan nilai sejarah dan budaya ini, berdiri Universitas Islam Indonesia.
Universitas Islam Indonesia sebagai pionir pendidikan tinggi nasional didirikan pada tanggal 27 Rajab 1364 Hijriah. Kampus UII didirikan dengan nama Sekolah Tinggi Islam atau STI di Jakarta yang lahir dari cita-cita luhur para tokoh nasional Indonesia.
Fakultas Teknik Sipil dan Perencanaan Universitas Islam Indonesia didirikan pada tanggal 12 Oktober 1964 dengan nama Fakultas Teknik Sipil dan memiliki satu program studi, yaitu Program Studi Teknik Sipil. Kini, Fakultas Teknik Sipil dan Perencanaan telah berkembang menjadi 3 jurusan, Teknik Sipil, Arsitektur, dan Teknik Lingkungan dengan berbagai program studi. Setiap jurusan didedikasikan untuk menyediakan pendidikan yang mutakhir dan mengembangkan solusi inovatif untuk tantangan modernisasi.
Jurusan Teknik Sipil UII didirikan pada 12 Oktober 1964 dengan pengalaman dan sejarah yang panjang. Jurusan Teknik Sipil UII hadir dengan 3 program studi yang telah mendapatkan rekognisi nasional maupun internasional. Dengan atmosfer akademik yang kuat dan kondusif, memungkinkan proses pembelajaran secara intensif dalam pemecahan masalah keteknik sipilan serta keterampilan berkomunikasi. Jurusan Teknik Sipil UII menyediakan fasilitas berbagai laboratorium penunjang studi mahasiswa sebagai sarana mewujudkan lulusan di bidang rekayasa sipil yang unggul dan inovatif. Adanya program internasional menunjukkan tekad kuat jurusan Teknik Sipil UII yang siap bersaing dalam skala nasional maupun global.
Jurusan Arsitektur UII didirikan pada tahun 1987 dan telah berkembang menjadi salah satu kampus arsitektur terkemuka di Indonesia. Arsitektur UII menawarkan program pendidikan berkualitas tinggi yang telah terakreditasi unggul secara nasional dan diakui secara internasional. Jurusan Arsitektur UII didukung oleh fasilitas laboratorium yang lengkap serta lingkungan belajar yang inspiratif untuk mendorong mahasiswa dalam merancang secara kreatif, memecahkan permasalahan, dan tumbuh menjadi arsitek yang peduli pada keberlanjutan dan perubahan sosial. Kehadiran program internasional semakin menegaskan komitmen arsitektur UI untuk mempersiapkan lulusan yang tidak hanya kompeten secara nasional, tetapi juga mampu bersaing dan beradaptasi di kancah internasional.
Teknik Lingkungan UII didirikan pada 22 September 1999 dengan latar belakang dari kesadaran akan degradasi lingkungan yang semakin memburuk. Hal ini sebagai jawaban atas permasalahan lingkungan untuk menciptakan insinyur yang memiliki kemampuan pengelolaan lingkungan secara berkelanjutan. Saat ini, jurusan Teknik Lingkungan UII hadir dalam 2 program studi, yaitu Program Studi Sarjana Teknik Lingkungan dan Program Studi Magister Teknik Lingkungan yang telah diakui dalam skala nasional maupun internasional. Fasilitas canggih dan staf pengajar ahli di jurusan Teknik Lingkungan memastikan bahwa mahasiswa menerima pendidikan yang mutakhir dan dipersiapkan untuk menjadi pemimpin di bidang teknik lingkungan.
Untuk mendukung karir internasional mahasiswa, Fakultas Teknik Sipil dan Perencanaan UII telah menjalin kemitraan dengan berbagai institusi baik di dalam maupun di luar negeri. Mobilitas internasional yang dapat diikuti oleh mahasiswa FTSB mencakup student exchange, double degree, international short course, dan berbagai program internasional lainnya. Kolaborasi ini memberikan kesempatan berharga bagi para mahasiswa FTSB untuk mendapatkan pengalaman dan wawasan secara global guna meningkatkan pendidikan dan pengembangan kemampuan profesional.
Bergabunglah dengan kami di Fakultas Teknik Sipil dan Perencanaan Universitas Islam Indonesia, tempat di mana inovasi dan tradisi berjalan seiring untuk membentuk masa depan yang lebih baik.
In the era of ever-evolving technology and infrastructure, we need an academic atmosphere that is attractive, amanah, terampil, kompeten, adaptif, inovatif, and shaped by a strong understanding of disaster awareness. An academic environment that allows you to explore new perspectives, to think critically, in a conductive space, while building noble character based on Islamic values. The Department of Civil Engineering at Universitas Islam Indonesia, UII, is committed to advancing the application of science and technology in a sustainable, excellent, and globally recognized way, all within an Islamic academic environment. With the implementation of an international standard education system, the UII Civil Engineering Study Program has achieved international accreditation from Japan Accreditation Board of Engineering Education, JABE, and IAB, as well as excellent accreditation from LAMTechnik. The Master's Program in Civil Engineering at UII, accredited as excellent by LAMTechnik, is here to meet the demand for advanced expertise in the world of construction and infrastructure. With an integrative academic approach, interdisciplinary, applicable research, and strong ties to professional networks, our master's graduates go beyond solving problems. The doctoral program in civil engineering at UII promotes value-based innovation, encouraging research that tackles complex societal issues through inter, multi, and transdisciplinary approaches. Academic facilities and infrastructure serve as one of the key foundations in building a strong academic environment. For this reason, the Department of Civil Engineering at UII is committed to ongoing improvement and sustainable development. A one-stop service center is available to provide easy access to information and administration. Classrooms are designed to be modern and conducive, encouraging interaction and an active learning experience. We believe that quality education is built through a holistic environment, intellectually, socially, and spiritually. Student accomplishments are supported by a consistent culture of achievement, not as an end goal, but the first step toward real contribution. The Student Exchange Program is part of our commitment to cross-border learning with real and lasting impact. Through partnerships with international universities, students don't just study in new places. They bring academic values they've gained at UII into global conversations. We provide space for students to explore and create scientific works focused on sustainable science and technology, serving as a reflection of their understanding and capabilities in their field and contributing to national progress and development. Now, turning your dream into reality is no longer a question. It's a certainty. We offer education within a strong academic atmosphere while contributing to the sustainable application of science and technology in civil engineering, with a disaster-conscious perspective grounded in both national and Islamic values. Because we're not just building structures, we're delivering solutions that improve life in the present and life in the future.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Wa idza quri'al Qur'anu fastami'u lahu wa anshitu la'allakum turhamun. A'udzu billahi minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ولا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد إصلاحها وادعوه خوفا وطمعا إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين وهو الذي يرسل الرياح بشرا بين يدي رحمته حتى إذا أقلت سحابا ثقالا سقناه لبلد ميت فأنزلنا به الماء فأخرجنا به من كل الثمرات كذلك نخرج الموتى لعلكم تذكرون صدق الله العظيم. Wassalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning, honorable speakers, guests, and participants. My name is Yulia and I am the chair of the International Conference on Sustainable Built Environment, ICSBE 2025, organized by Faculty of Civil Engineering and Planning, Universitas Islam Indonesia. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome all of you to the International Conference on Sustainable Built Environment 2025. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to extend our warmest greetings to all participants joining us here from Indonesia and also around the world. Allow me to acknowledge and express our deepest appreciation to our honorable guest, the Vice Rector for Partnership and Entrepreneurship, Mr. Insinyur Wiryono Raharjo, M.Arts PhD, representing the Rector of Universitas Islam Indonesia, and then the Dean of the Faculty of Civil Engineering and Planning, Universitas Islam Indonesia, Professor Dr. Insinyur E.R. Ilya Fajar Maharika, M.A. IEI, and then the deans from our partner universities, and then the distinguished speakers, Dr. Yulia, Nurliani, Lukito, ST, M.Des.S, and Professor Dr. Micah, as well as all distinguished researchers, practitioners, and students who have joined this important academic gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, the first ICSBE was held in May 2010 in Yogyakarta, and then the conference has been held biennially, and we are now at the 8th ICSBE. This year conference theme, Vernacularizing Sustainability, Stories of Ideas, Spaces, and Technologies, reflects our shared commitment to advancing sustainable practices in the built environment. This year's program consists of three main components: a workshop, a webinar series, and also a call for book chapter. As the chair, I'm pleased to report that the registered participants for ICSPE Webinar 1 come from various countries including Indonesia, Japan, India, Turkey, and Malaysia. We are proud that ICSBE has grown into an international platform where scholars and professionals from diverse backgrounds can come together to share insights, challenge perspective, and inspire one another. Finally, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all committees and partners who have worked tirelessly to make this event possible. May this conference be inspiring and pave the way for stronger collaboration among us all. Thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, selamat pagi, Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Civil Engineering and Planning, Professor Ilya Fajar Maharika, Vice Dean, and all the management chairs of the Faculty of Civil Engineering and Planning, Universitas Islam Indonesia. Honorable invited speakers, Professor Micah and Dr. Yulia Nurliani Lukito Harahap, and all the distinguished scholars, participants of the 8th International Conference on Sustainable Built Environment. First of all, let us thank Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for the health and the opportunity He has given us so that we can attend this event. We are sorry for missing our rector, Professor Fatul Wahid, who is supposed to deliver this opening message. He is unable to join this event because of other university assignment. The International Conference on Sustainable Built Environment was first initiated in 2010 by the Faculty of Civil Engineering and Planning of Universitas Islam Indonesia. I'm happy that we can maintain this conference. The name of this conference clearly shows that sustainability is the main topic this conference wants to address. So this conference is intended to refresh our understanding on various areas on sustainability. And this year, we focus on vernacularizing sustainability, exploring ideas and spatial narratives. The term vernacularizing reminds us that sustainability cannot be imposed from the top down or copied from one context to another. It must grow from within, rooted in local knowledge, traditions, and spatial practices that have sustained communities for generations. Our conversations in this conference will explore how these diverse narratives can shape more inclusive, adaptive, and resilient approaches to the space we design and inhabit. By bridging the global and the local, the traditional and the contemporary, we can begin to craft new pathways towards a truly grounded sustainability. We hope this conference can be a good event of sharing ideas among scholars on how we face the global challenge in managing the rapid pace of urbanization. I would like to thank all the invited speakers for investing your valuable time to contribute to this conference. Thank you also to the organizing committee who have worked very hard to make this event possible. Have a very productive conversations, and thank you. Wassalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
It's not just a city that started to grow. And he starts to make the linkages in history about how the possibilities of Chicago was only possible by the transformations that were happening all around it. So the ability to plant grain, to collect lumber, to source meat, all of these areas in the rural areas are what shaped the city of Chicago. And not only did it create the urbanization of Chicago, it also remade the American West. Now, a lot of scholars today talk about this process in this terminology of metabolism. So metabolism, you might think about the processes that regulate the body. But here we are extending the idea of metabolism to think about the city and its surrounding areas. So that's environmental history very quickly about an American city and a very specific story about the United States. But I think it's really pertinent for how we think about cities and its development in Southeast Asia. And for example, this work by Christian Carlos Seguin, Urban Ecologies on the Edge, it talks about how Laguna Lake, which is this area right next to the city of Manila, has a huge impact on shaping the city in terms of its geography, in terms of the fish and the food that is collected from there, in terms of its function as a flood management mechanism, in terms of its sanitation and water quality issues. And so this lake is really critical in how it remakes Manila. And at the same time, there's also scholars that are talking about Jakarta, like Abidin Kusno, who talks about the materialities of infrastructure. So how the production of these spaces then are produced by the institutions and the mediators that are involved in those. And his work has been really significant in helping us to think about what Indonesian cities are and are really important for us to think about what is sustainability in the context of natural hazards and development in a place like Indonesia. Cool. So that is just the theoretical side of thing, the conceptual. So I just wanted to help us think about these issues from a particular perspective. So if you have any questions on the theoretical and conceptual, please do ask, but I moved through that very quickly so that we can move to the case studies of which most people find a lot more interesting because you can relate to them and they're much more specific. Okay, a big city that floods. Now, I told you that this section, this part 2 is separated into 2 different sections. So in this first section, I'm talking about the formal version. So this is the analysis that you'll find in urban planning at the Jakarta Governor's Office, at the Ministry of Public Works, the consultants that develop this analysis to understand and explain why Jakarta floods. And as it floods, then if you understand what the problems are, then of course you develop what the solutions are. But that's a very specific perspective. And I want you to keep in mind this is one perspective that I'm going to contrast with perspectives of communities that live in the most flood-prone areas of the region. Okay, so we can't really talk about Jakarta without talking about history. And I've kind of gotten rid of the historical part. So I've gotten rid about why Jakarta became such a big city in the first place. How it was an outpost for colonial trade and the spice trade, and how Jakarta and Batavia changed over time. Where my story does start is this figure, which usually talks about Jakarta as, people often say that 250,000, so 250,000 people move to Jakarta every year, try to find opportunity there. And we can't really think about the city of Jakarta without thinking about rural development across Indonesia. And so here I have 2 pictures about if you go to farms and rural areas in Indonesia, a lot of people from a household are migrating elsewhere. So there's a process of rural to rural migration where people from rural communities move to other places to do industrial scale agriculture like mining or oil palm plantation as you see here. But there's also this parallel migration and probably many more numbers moving to places like Jakarta or urban centers to find work in the service industry or to find other opportunities. But I don't want to separate the city from the rural areas. Just as I explained about Chicago and this idea of metabolism, the rural and the urban are inseparable, and they mutually constitute and create one another. And so because of this population dynamic of rural to urban migration and this cyclical migration, a lot of the times the explanations of Jakarta and flooding and natural hazards in Jakarta are situated around the idea that certain numbers of population have lived here. So you see these terms of urbanization from 1972 to 83, all the way through time. And I show them in two-dimensional, but I also really like this topographical analysis that you can see here. And what's really interesting about the 3D image is where the development has taken place in the last, say, since the early 90s. A lot of the development is happening in the midstream areas. And if you look at the topography of these areas, if there's more rainfall, if the same rainfall is happening in upstream areas, but there's more concrete, the floods are going to move a lot faster into the urban areas. And if you don't have the retention capacity or the ability to divert those waters, you're going to have a lot more flooding. And so a very visual image of what that looks like, here you can see an area in 1990. This structure is over here on the left side, the circle in red, and you can see how much retention area has changed. And seeing how rapid this development has taken place over time, it's unsurprising that it would lead to significant amounts of flooding. And so when we understand flooding in Jakarta, we need to understand how the canal systems are set up. And there's some really interesting features of this. So it's very much created based on the Dutch system of polders. So polders is a way to divert a water to the lowest point, and then it gets pumped out and sent to the sea, which is very much reminiscent of how cities in the Netherlands are built and managed. And so here on the bottom right, you can see where there's the Java Sea. There's these two flood canals that protect the low-lying areas. There's retention basins that are then pumped out to the sea. What's also really interesting about Jakarta is the split institutional character of flood management canals. So all of those in blue are managed by the Ministry of Public Works, and all of those in orange are managed by the city government or the provincial government of DKI Jakarta. So we have a really complex sort of institutional landscape here of management that is based on a historical idea of the city. Now, if you don't understand too much about those issues, that's okay. But the point here that I'm trying to make is that the flood management plan for Jakarta was built for less than 1 million people. In the administrative area alone, you have over 10 million people in Jakarta. And if you look at it from that image I showed you in the last slide about how development has taken place over time, this is a metropolitan region that's 35 million people, and some talk about will be the largest metropolitan area in the world by 2030. So after population and land use, and then issues related to institutions and management, another major explanation of why Jakarta floods is related to sedimentation and waste. You'll see a lot of politicians talk about trash management and how there's lots of trash in the canal. Here on the left, you see an image of the sedimentation. So this was an argument that if you dredge and keep the canals working at full capacity, therefore it would flood a lot less. So with the sedimentation and the blockages from solid waste, this is the Manggarai Gate, one of the biggest kind of choke points that creates flooding in Jakarta. These are often cited as important issues related to flooding. Another major one is related to land subsidence. And here you can see sort of articles that have talked about the below ground dimensions of land subsidence. So because of water supply, access, a lot of deep wells. What they're showing is that Jakarta is very much susceptible to flooding from the sea, from tidal processes, which is very different from sea level rise from climate change, because the land is sinking much faster than the water is rising. But this is a major cause for flooding. And so taken together, you can see a process where upstream areas are experiencing high levels of rainfall. Development in the mid areas are creating faster and higher volumes of flood to the low-lying areas. You have problems of drainage with a not maximally functioning polder system in the city, and you have landslide incidents creating tidal flooding. And if those things happen all together at the same time, you have a significant hazard related to flooding. And as you hear all the time, these are the issues of flooding in Jakarta. So that's how risk and fixes, solutions to Jakarta floods is talked about in the Jakarta government. One river, one plan, one management, these sort of slogans to try to address these things. Now, I'd be remiss to not include information about the major sort of initiatives that have been attempted to try to address the Jakarta flooding at a major scale. And so this is one that hasn't been talked about in a long time, but there was plans to develop a large tunnel underneath Jakarta to divert high volumes of water for flooding. This is not talked about as much anymore. Then the second image here is about the Great Garuda, to create a huge seawall that would then create areas for real estate development, but also expand the area for management of water. And finally, in most recent years, one of the mega flood solutions has been, well, let's move the capital city to East Kalimantan. Again, this is the government perspective. I am not commenting on whether one is right or wrong, but I am commenting about how these political dimensions lead to expertise and then solutions that become specific initiatives in Jakarta. Now, I'm now at the School of Communication and Information, and I've been working a little bit on media studies. It's not my main expertise, but I've been working with Dr. Nurul Hasfi at Diponegoro University, and we did a major analysis of all the different newspapers. And we really saw this sort of periodicity of solutions for Jakarta flood. So between 2014 to 2017, under Ahok's sort of governor, when he was the governor, there was this idea of normalization. Let's move communities out, put up different sheet pilings so that we widen rivers and keep the canals working at their highest capacity. In more recent years, because of some of the political backlash to that situation, there was this idea that there needs to be a process of naturalization. And because of the politics of those times, emerged the idea of capital relocation that was implemented, which we don't know how it's going to play out today. So we call this a process of understanding how the politics from newspapers talk about risk, they talk about resilience, and how they talk about problems and solutions when it comes to flooding. Okay, so that was the big government sort of formal perspective. Now I want to turn to this idea of the vernacular meaning the day-to-day language about flooding. And from about 2012, I made very good connections with folks living in Kampung Melayu, and I've been following their stories over time. And Kampung Melayu is really interesting. I'm going to show a couple of videos here. Of the videos that we produced. I hope you can hear the audio.
Air ini campur, ya. Pak, kalau pakai air lainnya sama aja, Pak. Itu udah nggak ada lagi, Pak. Ini udah nggak gatel setiap hari. Tahu dah. Bagaimana nih, aduh. Kacau. Tahun 2008 pertama. Malah pada tahun 2009 setelah bisa tahun berjalan. Bentar. Ya dulu kan nggak ada rumah tingkat karena jarang kebanjiran. Sekarang banyak, malah yang satu tingkat jadi dua tingkat. Soalnya air kan makin kena sih, makin gede, makin gede. Kalau sampai ke atas aja kena. Dulu kan enggak. Kalau satu payung dapat dari mana? Katulampa Bogor. Misalnya air udah semana gitu. Terus nanti ke Depok berapa gitu. Ditelepon gitu dari lurah ke RW, RW ke RT. Kalau misalnya yang mau banjir kan dari RW udah datang, siarin. Nih Bu, di Depok seginikian misalnya. Ini sekian meter, kalau bilang 4 meter ya buru-buru keluar gitu. Kan kalau bilang ini 4 meter, 4,5. Kalau masih misalnya 3 meter masih terjangkau deh. Masih 3,5 meter masih terjangkau. Tapi kalau udah lewat dari 4 meter, ketakutan. Yang paling tinggi kemarin, yang paling tinggi kemarin yang kita di atas, yang lantai 1 itu sudah ada. Saya di atas gelap. Ya, terkadang warga-warga di sini pada ngungsi, bahkan ada juga yang dia tidur di atas loteng sambil kehujanan, kedinginan. Ya.
Okay, so those are some stories from Kampung Melayu in about 10, 15 years ago that we collected to try to tell the story of flooding from the perspective of local communities. So this is Ardi from Kampung Melayu. We've been friends for a really long time. We're still friends. And the stories that from those videos that I'm really trying to highlight is number one, you can see that flooding has become a day-to-day sort of lived experience for people. You see them hanging out, drinking their coffee while they're standing in the floods. You see them washing their clothes in flood water, saying that they don't get itchy anymore from that stuff. You can see cars going through. You can see them kind of dumping the water out. But you can also see really, really sort of close-knit communities of working together, right? When they have a flood situation, they have these networks of youth that go to the tops of the houses, and they take people across the top and they evacuate them. And one of the major questions that comes up to this is, well, of course, people shouldn't be living there. And what are the solutions from them? And it's really interesting to see those solutions and perspectives from the vernacular sort of day-to-day experiences of folks like this. Okay, I see questions in the chat. Okay, these are good. I will get back to them soon. Okay. So again, this is a little alleyway in this place, Kampung Melayu, and you could hear how badly these areas were flooded. So when I talk to people about flooding, and a lot of this came from oral histories and just long conversations with folks in these areas, and these perspectives really highlight some really important things. You see the blue here? This is how much the lumpur, this mud, would get built up after every major flood event. And so it showed how closely people began to work together. And these quotes here talk about how the drainage was bad and how sometimes after the floods you couldn't open your front door because the mud was so high. But it also brought the community together. They invested and bought high-powered jet pumps, and they would clean out these areas using these high-powered jet pumps after the event. So a lot of folks didn't talk about the flooding as being the major issue. They really talked about the problems with the cleanup afterwards, because that's what stopped kids from going back to school. And those were kind of the sources of disease and things like that, and really made it difficult to go in and out. And I just want to show here, the stories of the vibrancy. When I spoke to Artie and all of these families in these neighborhoods, they talked about how close the community was. And one of the important issues was this idea of ownership. These people, they bought these lands and have the land certificates legitimately. These aren't the migrants that I talked about that are coming just recently that don't have any rights. These these people were born here. They purchased these homes. And the flooding in the past wasn't so bad. And these are families, and we should see them as families that practice their citizenship just the same way as other people. It just so happens over many years, flooding became worse and worse because of the way the city is structured and how things have changed. Because of these flood situations and the rise of Joko Widodo to become the governor of Jakarta, I know this is old history now, since he's already finished 2 different terms as president. But the promise when he became the governor was that he would compensate people, that he would come in and give people a good deal to be able to move somewhere else. So he talked about, going to consult with local communities to compensate their chicken coops, the trees, everything would be compensated. They talked about, my mother was called in by local officials. They had public consultations of how they're going to normalize, and that they would give just compensation for these communities. They promised us a good deal, and we were ready to move. But of course, in the transition of power, politics happens, and every time a flood takes place, it's not separated from politics. So flooding is not, banjir is not a non-political situation. So it's the promises that were made to move lots of communities, in practice, there was a lot of collateral damage. And so when these plans were implemented, when another governor, in this case Ahok, was in place, the way it was done, how they approached us, how they forced us, there was a lot of broken trust that happened. If they did it right, we agree. We should have moved because of the flooding and how bad it was. People shouldn't live in those situations. But they treated us as if we had nothing. And this is what it looked like after the evictions, and how these communities that I happen to know were moved out. They were moved just without compensation. They were given only a certain number of keys for a certain number of households. They pitted families against each other, right? The adu domba, the families fought over it. There was a lot of fear that was instilled in these communities, and they put a wedge between them, and whether we liked it or not, we had to give out. And now we worry how we will make enough money to pay rent for each month. Back then we were flooded, but at least we owned our homes. And here's, pictures of families who showed all their land certificates, everything, all the formal documentation that they had for these places. And just the overall disappointment after having been moved into this Rusunawa, this public housing here. And so this is what life looks like now for those that were forced to move out of these areas that were flooding. It floods less now in Kampung Melayu, they say, but is it better? They say the old place is easier to find a rejeki, right? To find work because of the location and because of their networks. But it's different from a public housing perspective, from the Rusunawa. It's difficult to find work from here. Structurally, it's good. It's clean. There's good services. From a public health perspective, it's a good thing. But there's also challenges living on the 3rd floor for the elderly, for those with health issues and diabetes. They're pretty much just stuck living in their apartments. So even though they feel lucky, they still have to pay for these apartments. And when it goes to the next generation, they go back into the big pool. And so they feel a lot of anxiety about where they will go next. And it all goes back to these stories of flooding, connection to place, and what is a city. And here you can see the sheet piling that was put in right at the location where the homes of these communities used to be. They talk about, I'm somebody that was evicted. Our community was split in half. The other half got to stay. They are thankful they got to keep their homes, but it's not like they escaped the flooding. Now they're set up to a pumping system it has to always work to keep them dry. So if there's any overtopping, if the pumps don't work, there's a lot of sedimentation and trash. these things get clogged up, and it's an increasingly dangerous situation for the types of flooding that could potentially happen in these locations. But these communities that were evicted and moved out, they still keep in touch. They talk about bit worse health issues related to mosquitoes, and things look better now, but that doesn't mean they've fixed the problem. If you want to talk about floods, you have to deal with the upstream issue. The seas are rising and the land is subsiding. The water is always going to fight back. So this is the final part of my presentation, where I just want to wrap together and bring together these different concepts. I started by talking about this broad idea of sustainability, but understanding sustainability from the perspective of its multitudes, how we see the city from the different perspectives that explain them. And I went in on this research project to understand how the government thinks about flooding and how communities think about flooding. And both of them are trying to prioritize these ideas about place. And so for the government, they talk about these one canal systems. They talk about how to restore it to the original master plan, this Dutch created system of polders for a city that was never designed to the size that it currently is today. And it's unsurprising that it continues to flood. But because of the massive changes, flooding has happened in ways that were unexpected. So communities like this one that I chose to research cannot talk about flooding without talking about their ability to remain in place, their ability to access and have continued connections to these places. And so I talked today about different stories of people who remained in Kampung Melayu and people who were moved out. And for me, conceptually, this is the key background to thinking about sustainability. And the question that I would ask is, when we're talking about sustainability, especially when we're talking about flooding and resilience and vulnerability, we need to be talking about sustainability for whom? And here I have this blue box on citizenship. Cities are about belonging, about who has access and who gets to have a place in that location. And I talked about the political situation, and it really showed how politics were shaped by ideas of who gets to benefit from the city. They're also about repair, and here I put in green. A lot of times we talk about degradation, but from both of those perspectives, there's always this constant approach or interest in trying to repair things. And whether it's repair at a community level or repair at a scaled sort of regional institutional level, these are really, really important points. And so I'll end by talking about the future of the city. When we connect ideas of sustainability from the formal institutional mandates all the way to the day-to-day, the vernacular sort of ideas of risks and resilience, we're really talking about what is the city, how the city came to be, what priorities are important for the city today, and ultimately what becomes the city of the future. And in my last slide here, in just saying thanks for giving me the opportunity, when we think about scale at a global level, I think this image is extremely pertinent, because what you see here is a map of disasters and the economic losses that have happened because of those disasters. So on the x-axis, on the left side, you see the number of disasters. On the right side, you see economic damage in billions of dollars. And you can see this red line, which is economic damage that has gone way up over the last 70, 80 years. And this is largely attributed to the amount of climate-related or hydrometeorological disasters that have taken place. Now, by geophysical disasters, you can see on yellow at the bottom here, are still continuing apace, and they're having also a huge impact on economic damages. But what's really clear here is the increase in the amount of hydrometeorological disasters. And I think when we talk about the story of climate change around the world, especially in cities that affect lots of people, like a place like Jakarta, these are going to continue to increase. And so I'll just end by by expressing, the concerns about the potential impacts of flooding, but also the care that we need to take in how we approach understanding what the problem is. They aren't just climate related hydrometeorological issues. They are related to people and the day-to-day lives of people in situations from around the world. And I think with that, I will stop my presentation here and use the remainder of my time to take questions. So thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to present this research today, to allow me to think about what is vernacularizing sustainability and the ideas of how we think about sustainability through the multitude of ways that it's experienced and approach from an institutional level, an academic level. What are you studying as students of sustainability? What are you, who are you talking to when you think about sustainability? What communities does that impact and for what reasons? And I'll end by saying thank you very much. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Prof. Fisher, for your presentation. It's quite a lot to chew, actually, but it's perspective from your presentation. We can see both perspective from government and also from the local people. And before we continue, I would like to invite to any of you, any of audience who wants to ask a question directly to Professor Micah. Please open your mic and please give your questions directly. Okay, yeah, Pak Adityawan Sigit, okay, please open your camera and you may ask directly to Professor Micah.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for Professor Micah. I'm really pleased to see your presentation, especially about the flood, because me myself, I also a little bit studying about the flood, but there are one more factors that are need to be concerned, that there's socioeconomic factors in Indonesia, which is we knew that the what is it called? The distribution of social economy in Indonesia is not quite even. What I want to ask is directly right now in Semarang and Demak, yeah, we knew that Semarang and Demak are prone to flooding due to many factors, but however, it is certain that flood vulnerability in there in Semarang and Demak will be very, very difficult to overcome. And also, I want to ask also socioeconomic issues, which is we knew that Demak is one of the provinces that's very poor. I want to ask you about, is there any experience from you to carrying out like a gradual relocation in areas with low socioeconomic status, which is area that low socioeconomic status is the political interest. You said about there's a political interest problem in there for society, for the citizens, right? So in comparing Demak and Semarang, there will be a different socioeconomic status and will be different political interests. Is there any experience how to overcome that this condition like that? I want to. Is there any experience? That's my question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the questions, Micah.
Yeah, those are really great questions, and I'm so thankful that you brought up that first point about the socioeconomic factors, the distribution of resources and support initiatives. I mean, that's exactly how I started my presentation. the first picture that I showed about Jakarta wasn't about Jakarta. It was about rural areas, and it's about the potential for opportunity that people have. And so, is there if you totally rethink how development takes place in Indonesia, could you imagine a world where people are not moving to cities to look for work? Is there a world in Indonesian development policy where it's focused on keeping rural communities and supporting them to have employment and opportunity in rural areas? That's just a hypothetical question, right? And lots of other countries, when you talk about comparatives with international and other places, there are countries that have focused their development model on rural areas. Because of the concerns with urbanization and things like that. But for Indonesia, the way that development policy has been implemented has, whether intended or not, resulted in significant urbanization. And when you have urbanization at the scale that it is taking place in these types of areas, you're going to get major natural hazards issues that impact certain people really badly. And I think that, your examples of Semarang and Demak are really, really good ones. And there's been a lot of good research about those areas. I've done, some work in Semarang. I lived in Kamijen for a field school for a couple days and worked with communities to talk about land subsidence and flood management. I brought a student group there in 2016, and we just interviewed all sorts of communities about why it's flooding or what solutions would be. And for a place like Demak, I think the situation is even more concerning because the contrast that I'm making is that when you look at an institutional government perspective, they have budgets, but the resources only go so far. And so they have to make choices about what they do. They can't do everything for everybody, right? And so the promise that came with consultation, we're going to do compensation, we're going to give you money, we're going to relocate you to public housing. Well, the budgets didn't allow for all of those promises to be kept. And so there was a selection process of who got to benefit from those experiences. And, a lot of the political changes were because some people felt so marginalized as being Indonesian citizens, as being citizens of Jakarta, of not being included in the process that, in my opinion, created a social movement that took down Ahok, right? It wasn't just about the political things that you read in the newspaper. It was about real disgruntled communities that had been affected in particular ways. And I think the overall question, when you talk about experience of relocation, we work a lot about this on the Pacific. I have colleagues who, much worse than coastal areas of Indonesia, like I'm seeing in the chat. You have islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that are disappearing because of sea level rise over time, where people do not have the land that they came from ever again. And I think the questions of relocation are really, really interesting to study in those contexts. And they're really important, right? Whether they're treaties with New Zealand, there's many different ways that you can provide households and people the kind of terms that they can accept. Because I showed in Kampung Melayu, they weren't against solutions, right? They weren't against. They were totally in agreement. The quotes that I showed you, they believed that leaving was the right thing to do because it was such a dangerous place to live because of flooding. But when you took away the most important thing to them, their land title, their access to this place, something that they can own for generations, then you have major problems. And I think that's the key here. The more you talk to local people, the more you understand the implications, the better any sort of resilience planning and implementation is going to be. And for me, that's what sustainability and the vernacularizing of sustainability would be. Great question. Thank you so much, Mas Adi.
Yeah, thank you very much for the answer, Prof. Micah. So it's like letting people stay or they should leave because of the environment. Okay, thank you very much. Please, any other questions for the discussions? Please, you may raise your hand and joining us for the discussion. Okay, not yet. Okay, I would like to continue with the questions from the chat box here. Um, so, wait, where is it? There's one question from Muhammad Nazaruddin. I have a question. How do we build efficient building for such a dense population, and how do we implement sustainable concepts? Hopefully you can answer that, Prof. Mike.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's the question that I was thinking about the whole time during this presentation. So I probably should have been more explicit about how I answered that question. But I think the answer is it depends. Kenapa, Bu? Yeah,
Sorry?
the answer is it depends. It depends.
It depends.
It really depends because efficient building, you can design almost anything, right? And so it's not that we lack any technology. It's not like we lack the ability to do these things. It's a question for me about process. It's not an architectural solution only, although architectural solutions are part of it. It's not an engineering solution only, although engineering solutions are necessary. There's many different sort of conceptual examples, and a lot of these have worked on a small scale. I don't want to say that like I gave you an example of eviction, right? Just because that's what I studied. I wanted to contrast. I wanted to show the opposites of something. So I'm not saying it's one way or the other. I wanted to step back and say, this is how the government sees it, and this is how one community sees it. But, there's Rio, for example, in Jakarta, which had a very different sort of consultative process that rebuilt their communities in a specific way with architectures, innovations, with community consultations. And people talk about that as a big success story. I didn't study that location. So this question about how do we implement sustainable concepts, I think you're exactly right. That's the question we all need to be asking all the time. We all need to be saying how. And it's not something that you go to Rotterdam or New York City or Nairobi or Rio de Janeiro to find. You find them in place. I mean, you take innovations and sort of inspiration from other locations. You study the problem. You compare. You try to understand it the best that you can. But the best solutions are the solutions that are found in those places. They're the solutions that are acceptable to people without making them so disappointed with the institutions that are supposed to protect them.
Okay. So it's not about the technicalities, but more about the how these solutions accepted by people. Is quite interesting. Yes, thank you very much. And
but hold on, it's not about the technical solutions. The technical solutions are so important, right?
Yeah.
But it's the technical solution and the process-oriented solutions. If those things can come together, you can do many things to address risk and resilience. Now, that raises a really important question, an important question of scale, right? So in Indonesia, when you talk to local governments, everybody's complaining about ego sectoral, right? It's just agency versus this agency. And then they're talking about, jurisdiction. You know what I mean by jurisdiction? It's like, this is Jakarta Barat, this is Jakarta Timur, Selatan, right? So they can't work together. So this is a question of scale, right? And jurisdiction. So it's not just technical solutions, it's not just consultations, but it's about processes that come together to make solutions workable. And the question of scale when it comes to climate change, I purposefully ended my presentation on climate change because the scale issue connects to a global problem. right?
Mm.
And it's not a global problem that you can fix at once. A lot of this, the implications of the global problem are going to reverberate for generations to come. So, but that doesn't mean we ignore the problem, right? We work with the situations we have, we innovate in ways that allow us to work together to bridge those things that have stopped us from being able to innovate solutions in the past.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. We work together to find the best solution for this issues. Okay. So I would like to continue for for other questions. Um, okay, maybe there's a one people who raising their hands to ask directly. Please, I want to invite Tania Nurfadila to open your mic and questions directly.
Yeah, good morning, but I'm sorry about the name because the name was the name of my wife, who is a student of the of the professional in UII. So it's very interesting what you said about this presentation. But I've recently read a book. It's called Phytopolis by Stefano Mancuso. So he basically argues that we are basically doomed if we don't incorporate nature in our cities, because it's basically nature is what keeps us alive. So recently there's been a lot of these natural-based solution, etc., and such as the recently built Tibet Eco Park, which was from the moment of Anies Baswedan when he was governor, I believe. But you said also that climate migration is kind of inevitable. So it's going to be a lot of upcoming displacement because of this of the climate change, basically of the rising seawater, which obviously it will cause unprecedented climate migration. So my question is, what do you think is better to focus on? Like, if we move more towards the recent natural-based solutions, that we keep the existing places that we have and incorporating more of these natural-based solutions, or rather if we prepare other places like maybe some other cities to be able to adapt of the incoming flux of these displaced communities from the climate change. Thank you. And that's my question.
Okay. Thanks for your question. Sorry. Mas Gali, go ahead. Did I cut you off? Sorry.
Yeah. No. Please continue your answer, Professor.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that point. I could not hear everything that you said, but I will try. I heard you talk about eco parks as solutions in Jakarta. I heard about like nature-based solutions, and then the issue of unprecedented climate migration. I think I have that sort of right, and I think, again, I was studying a theoretical sort of take on this. Albert Einstein said, if I had 60 minutes to solve the biggest problem in the world, I would spend 59 minutes on the problem and 1 minute on the solution. And I think that's what he said. It's something like that. But the point is, I think that a lot of times we're so quick to pick a solution, right? There's always a new term, an eco park or a nature-based solution or resilience or carrying capacity. There's always a new term about how to solve things. And I'm not here, Jakarta is so big and so complex. I'm not here to tell anybody how to solve Jakarta's problems. But I am here to talk about how we can understand how cities change over time. I'm here to talk about how we can think about sustainability in ways that are more productive towards understanding the problem. So I don't really want to say what the solution is. What is the solution? Does nature-based solutions work? The answer is maybe yes in some places. The answer might also be like maybe no in some places. And I think the attention to process and what's it called? Perspective is really important to us. And I think that that's what I would say. And I don't really like the term climate migration because I don't really think it's a really confusing term for me because when you hear about people migrating for climate, usually it's the people who have the ability to migrate, right? But in our minds, when we say climate migration, you think of poor people who, there's badai besar, and then they're like running away from it. But the reality, when you interview people who are climate migrants, they're usually people that have the ability to migrate. And so the question then becomes is like, what are the vulnerabilities of the people that stay behind? And the first story that I told you today was a story about migration, none of which had to do with climate, right? These lands, the land that I showed you, the land that I farmed in South Sulawesi is extremely subur, right? It's very fertile. They're not having problem producing enough food. What they're looking for is employment opportunities to gain more income for ideas of development. And so I really want to challenge you all to think about when you say the word climate migration or when you think about a climate migrant, what kind of people are you talking about? And are there other factors for them to be migrating in the first place? Because usually the reason for migration is much more about something else than it is about the climate. And the other side of that is sometimes the people that move because of climate are the people that have the ability to do so rather than the people who are the worst off. So it's a really complex sort of issue. I don't mean to harp on climate migration. I know that was only the second part of your question, but in terms of like, what is the solution for Jakarta? I think those solutions are about process and they're about place. And I think it's about involvement rather than removal. And I think that when we talk about issues of climate change, they need to be seen with as a suite of other factors. When the research that I've done on climate migration, and which is what I'm talking about now, which is a very different presentation than what I'm giving today, we call it as a threat multiplier. I don't know if anybody's heard of that term, but it's like people have vulnerabilities, existing vulnerabilities, and what climate does is it makes those vulnerabilities a little bit worse. But you can't just deal with the climate. You have to deal with the underlying issue. You can't just tidak bisa diabaikan saja, right? You can't just ignore the original problem of that risk. And so I think that's really important.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer, Prof. Micah. It give our questions to us. It's not about people who stay. Sorry, it's not about people who have the ability to move. How about people who stay? And it's all about the process and the place. Yeah. Do we still have questions from the audience? Or should I read the question? Okay. Will you like to respond for that? Please. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Once more, and after this, Prof. Elia will continue. Yes. Please, Titania again. Yeah. Yes. Please, Titania Padilla.
Hello. Can you hear me?
It sounds like you're stuck with the title Titania. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
But tell your wife hello, okay?
Hello, can you hear me? Because I'm afraid that
yeah.
disconnected. Perfect. Thank you very much for the insight. I agree with your what you said, but what I wanted to say is about the climate migration. Maybe I make it too broad. I should focus it more about the displaced people from the climate change. they the one that they cannot that they don't have any other choice to move, such as because of the climate change that we say, that the rising seawater rise that you say, and obviously the rising seawater will cause some problems of displacing those that you say that are vulnerable and become more vulnerable. And when the seawater really like rises from, let's say, 1 meter, it's impossible for them to stay where they are now, maybe or not. So what happens to those people that have no other way of moving to other place, no other way of living in that place? Maybe another example, but not exactly climate change, more of because of the corporation, is the Situbondo, the Lumpur Sidoarjo, Lumpur Lapindo, because of the corporations drilling for mud, and then there's thousands of families who are displaced, and maybe in the future that will become more prevalent, that as we move towards the time. So what do you think about those people? Thank you.
Okay. About this place.
My answer doesn't change, and I want to challenge you, Bapak Titania. I want to challenge you. I want to do a research project with you. I want you to find those people that you identify as climate migrants, and I want you to go talk to them. And if you can find those people that you're talking about, let's go talk to them. Because I just finished a research project, 7 countries, okay? India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia. 7 countries. We went to community groups and found areas that people talk about as being climate migrants. Places like you described, Situbondo. Is that a climate disaster? Right, it's not. It's not. And you talk about sea level rise. I talked about Jakarta. It's a development problem. It's not a climate problem. It's a land subsidence issue, right? So what I'm saying is that, like, you know, who are these people displaced from so-called climate change? And does it help us to think about climate migration as a category, a big category of people that we study? Or are there better ways to think about who is and what is the process of climate migration?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I know you're unsatisfied, but
no, it's very nice. Yeah, I'm kind of unsatisfied though, but that's what's making me more interested of this discussion, and it's becoming really interesting because recently I just got home from Italy. I've got some immigrant friends who are, let's say, during when I was studying language, there was this person who came from I don't remember, from Africa, around Africa, who comes by the boat, because when I say it, because it's a lot of conflicts, and it's because it's getting hard to live. I'm not sure if that's considered as a climate migration or not, but if you think about it, climate may be one of the main reasons, that push the people to go out. Because previously, maybe
You're right. You're absolutely right. It may be, but I challenge you. Find out. This is an empirical challenge. You're giving me a conceptual issue, and I am challenging you on an empirical level. What I'm challenging you is go find those people, talk to them, and come back to me and tell me how you would redefine climate migration.
Okay. That's a nice challenge for you. Okay. Thank you very much. Maybe you can keep in touch after this.
Okay. Thank you very much for the discussion, but I think we don't have much time left. Thank you very much. But we have one more from Prof. Ilya, our dean. Please, Prof. Ilya, to open your mic and video.
think exactly what we think during formulating the theme of uh, this seminar.
Kayaknya suaranya nggak kedengeran ya?
Sorry, but I'm in the train, so it's not really.
Sorry, Prof. Yulia. We cannot hear your voice.
Sorry.
We cannot hear your voice clearly. I'm sorry.
I just want to give radiation for you. Sorry.
Sorry, Prof. Ilya, maybe you can use not use earphone for that and talking with the laptops directly.
Yeah, try again, Prof. Ilya. I really want to hear what you say. I really liked your earlier comments, so I'm curious what you have to say. Let's try again, please.
Is that audible now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm on the train, so it's a little bit noisy. Yeah? So just want to say my appreciation to your topic, Micah, because this is exactly what we need. And we try to, my comment is just, we will try to formulate our books, and we of course invite you as one of the author or maybe the editor of our book to push many issues, the local and also vernacular issues, the stories, in order to quote unquote to not to counter the big narrative of sustainability, but give more balance based on the view of the multitudes. Thank you, Micah, for your insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ilya. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to echo my thanks, and I do. I'm in Indonesia every year in June and July because of my teaching schedule. So I have research in East Kalimantan and South Sulawesi and Jakarta and Semarang next summer. So there's an opportunity. I will be in Jogja on July 6th to the 10th. So if there's an opportunity for us to meet and talk about potential joint research, please let me know. I love working with students. I really enjoy research collaborations. I think there's a lot of opportunity. These questions are so important. So I really appreciate what you said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll keep in touch with you, surely.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay. Thank you very much, for your insight today. It was exceptional start for our session. Let's show our appreciation with virtual round of applause for Prof. Fisher. Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Fisher. Okay, so right. Okay, now we are going to continue our agenda. It's for the second presenter. It's my honor to introduce Dr. Yulia Nurliani Lukito, M.Des.S. Dr. Yulia's scholarly journey is truly international. She solidified her expertise with a doctorate degree from RWTH Aachen University in Germany, which she completed in 2015, building a master in degree studies from Harvard University earned in 2004. Her research career is marked by consistently securing competitive grants and leading innovative projects. To name a few, she is currently lead for the Endangered Wooden Architecture Program, or EWAP, by Oxford Brookes University, and pioneering a technology and infrastructure for net zero transition in Puskesmas. And 2026. Her cutting-edge research is also reflected in her latest publications. One in 2025 is work on documenting vernacular villages with 3D scanning technology. She will present a research titled Vernacularizing, Layering Sustainability in Ideas, Spaces, and Technologies. And everyone, let's us extend our warm welcome to Dr. Yulia Lukito. Dr. Yulia, you may start your presentation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here among my colleagues, scholars, and friends who have dedicated their work to rethinking and what sustainability means in our own context. And I also appreciate the first speaker, which is talk about a lot of things that it's very modern vernacular in a way that's the context that we have right now, and even in Jakarta we have flood right now. But then my talk will be on the reflection of what I think about vernacularizing, but not as it's a reflection of what I've done and also what I teach in my class in architecture. And we often talk about sustainability or sustainable technology as if they are futuristic. But what if the future we seek is already embedded in our past? And then in the ways how people build and live in balance with their environment. So of course, I'd like to thank you for the organizer for inviting me, and also for the vice rector, Dr. Wiryono Raharjo, the dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Professor Ilya Fajar Maharika, PhD, and also Ibu Yulia Pratiwi, PhD, and also our moderator, Mas Galih here. Let me share my screen first. One moment, please. Yeah, it's now in full screen. So it's about vernacularizing. It's like the top of the food, like it's the top layer that I want to relate it both vernacular and sustainability in ideas, space, and technology that I've experienced. So we think about vernacular architecture and often considered as cultural symbol that becomes work of art from particular place. The image that I choose for today is from the 1931 colonial exhibitions in Paris, when we can see that more than just like a representation of buildings, vernacular buildings in Indonesia. So since 1931, it means that the idea of Indonesian architecture becomes very popular, but then in a position that it's very distant with the modern. Actually, vernacular houses are manifestation of culture built on knowledge and building practices that pass down from one generation to the next one. And then what can we do about it, in relation to the vernacular architecture and also to sustainability? So to me, the vernacular is a living knowledge. And the one that I just gave the image of vernacular architecture in 1931 exhibition is misunderstood as primitive and non-design, not really can adapt to the local, or maybe more than just local, to current situation. But then, when I think about it, in truth, vernacular architecture is the original open source design system. This is something that is very popular right now, open sources, and that everything should be given to the public. But it's already there in vernacular architecture, and it's also refined over generation, and we can see, the changes through living culture. Yeah. So it embodies environmental fitness, and then it's very dynamic. And then, so this is to me, to understand vernacular design historically is to study evolutionary sustainability. So I'm not talking about nostalgia, but it's a system of continuous adaptation to place. So vernacularizing sustainability. Maybe it's the idea of metaphor that I want to use. I mistype vernacularizing, so it becomes vernacularizing. So now I think, why not? It's really a metaphor that I really want to talk about, because icing suggests refinement, beauty, detail, and also adaptation. And it's at the top of the layer of the food or anything that creates beautiful thing in our life. While sustainability begins with continuity, local wisdom, and also foundation for the global idea of sustainability. So today I'm going to trace how vernacular knowledge system, local materials, and emerging technology intertwine to form living, evolving architecture of sustainability. So some of them I'll move into stories, the experience that I find during the research or encounter with vernacular during my visit in one of the vernacular settlements, or maybe just to rethink about what I got from the book and discussion with my students. So the connection between vernacular architecture and sustainability, maybe the first one is the most important one, because space, climate, and vernacular logic of comfort, we can find that in vernacular houses. Because vernacular houses is climate responsive design, and then it becomes the best original sustainability, and it lives in the logic of vernacular space. Before we use air conditioner, vernacular builders master thermal comfort. And then we have also organization of space with courtyard that grip deep microclimates and veranda, and also the use of orientation, shadows, and lights, that it's very comfortable. I just have a visit to northern part of Sulawesi, islands of Bunaken, and then the idea is to think about local wisdom in sustainability in not only for using technology like air condition, but actually we have passive cooling that can be used. Before we decided that all of the building, this one is Puskesmas, a small Puskesmas in Bunaken, should use air conditioned. Yeah, and then it's a jump between vernacular and wisdom with passive cooling into the HVAC system or air condition. So I think these principles that we have balance between house, people, and also climate, rooted in empirical knowledge. And then we can validate that, and we can use simulation using technology, so we can have one more time comfort in this changing environment. And the second one, maybe materials also becomes very good storytellers, because each material carries an ecological biography, and we think about vernacular houses using local materials. And then when we try to replace these materials with industrial products or new products, so we lose not only environmental balance, but also narrative part. As an example, in Wairabo, we have this kind of like cone-like roof, and then the upper part is darker than the lower part. It's because inside the house they have stoves, and then this smokes becomes part of the that keeps small insect so it's like become preservation of the roof. Even it's darker, and for longer time it will be darker, but it's actually part of the conservation of the roof. So to build sustainability, I think we must restore intimacy with materials and with the hands that shape them, or maybe from local tukang. And then the third one, from tradition to technology, there's a continuum of wisdom. Tradition and technology are not opposites, and they're part of a continuation. Both local craftsmen, also designer, and also a continuous adaptation with climate and local situation. So when technology learns from tradition, I think innovation becomes regeneration. So why not using both? Yeah, local knowledge, continuing local knowledge, and also using technology. So we have a lot of things like parametric modeling or 3D printing or 3D scanning that helps to understand and even help us to create innovation from local knowledge. Yeah. So digital tools allow us to simulate the intelligence that tradition embedded intuitively. Okay, and the fourth one, the connection between sustainability and vernacular architecture, I think it's beyond the frozen heritage. So it's not only conserving the form, but then through conservation sustains life. So it should be a living heritage, not just walls, and bridging the memory, the past memory, but then it should be adaptable to a current condition. So in conservation, we often freeze heritage as static artifact, yet vernacular environments thrive on evolution. What we call something as traditional or as traditions, once it's very innovative, right? So unfortunately, this idea of innovation kind of like now in the opposite of the traditional. So when adaptive reuse allows old buildings to host new life, it should be that people remain relevant, the functions remain relevant, and then there should be a dialogues, living dialogues even, between memory, modernity, and people who live there. Even theories like Paul Ricoeur remind us that identity itself is narrative. So we conserve by retelling, by say that to the next generation, not by embalming it. And the last one is the social life of craft, because every act of making is also an act of belonging. So when we look at vernacular architecture, sustainability is social there. Craft tradition encode not only material skills, but also collective values, cooperation, apprentices, and mutual aid. And vernacular practice is therefore a social technology, something that is really hard to find now because technology means only something that is modern. It should be as part of the cooperation and mutual connection between people in society. Okay, now what about vernacular futures? So I've mentioned something about digital, local, maybe it should be also hybrid. So to me, the future of vernacular should be more into hybrid thing when digital tools guided by local intelligence, and then architects or maybe designer can reimagine how people build, and then using certain kind of methods or get involved with the participatory processes. So the fusion challenged the false binary between high tech and low tech because, this is this structuralism with high and low, and then modern and also traditional division is for Indonesia. It's not only because of the science, but also our history with colonization. That is the distant ideas about what the Dutch bring as modern, and then what we have here, local as traditional. So the fusion will be envision sustainability as cultural as well as technological, no longer separate them, and a synthesis that honors both the algorithm and the ancestor. And then the last one will be stories of sustainability. The more I visit vernacular settlement, the more I got about ideas and stories, connected to the layers of sustainability. So to me, every sustainable practice is born from narrative, the tale of people learning to live within their limits. So if we do only one part of like technological part to understand the vernacular architecture, I think it will be only one part of the idea. It should be combined also with finding the local narrative. So both local technology, local building methods, and also local stories is part of this design intelligence. This is something that is very familiar actually for Eastern culture like Indonesia and Asia. Then storytelling, oral culture is part of the whole culture here. So think about the site, archive, and medium, because we are no longer only dealing with vernacular architecture at the past. I have some thoughts that actually heritage sites and architecture can be understood as archive that store cultural memory and identity. And it waits for our medium, our ways like drawings, photograph, digital scan, or anything to mediate our understanding of this heritage. So vernacular houses become archive, and this new technology or even conventional ideas of documenting or making sketches become mediums that reframe our understanding of the vernacular and also global accessibility to this vernacular knowledge. So I tried to have a more specific reflective questions here, since I did 3D scanning with my team, and also photogrammetry. So in what ways does this 3D scanning and photogrammetry act as medium that reshape our understanding of vernacular heritage, and what possibilities does this framework offer for interpreting other similarly complex sites? Think about the heritage. Actually, this is important to be passed on to future generation, that we need to remember we have heritage as tangible and intangible cultural heritage. So both become a part of the idea of heritage. An example of tangible cultural heritage will be like buildings, artistic creations, and monuments, while intangible cultural heritage becomes a part of the tradition, maybe the skills or traditions that also build up the whole idea of heritage. And then it's very important then to document our cultural heritage, because in doing documentation, it means that we helped to understand the systematic process of building, and also we also have the systematic process of recording, describing, and preserving information about these buildings and sites. So documentation of cultural heritage is done for various purposes. Now it's really the time that we think about conservation, education, even public awareness, because our environment changes a lot, and then we need to refer to the originality. Perhaps originality is also good in talking about heritage. Where should we go back to if we want to do our conservation? So it involves gathering data about the site's historical, architectural, artistic, social, and cultural significance. And by recording previous knowledge, we not only preserve time-tested techniques and tradition, but also encourage the development of new practices. So why should we document cultural heritage? The answer is already there. When we heard about Notre Dame, the Paris Cathedral was on fire, or Umayyad Great Mosque of Aleppo was destroyed. With this a good documentation, we can rebuild this building with lot of values, related to human culture. And then for the documentation process, there are a lot of variety in the process. We can have photography and videography, written records, mapping and surveying, digital technology, and oral history interviews. And of course, we can have like a lot of purpose for documentation, like in preserving and facilitate conservation, and even to support education. Unfortunately, that like some of these traditional houses of vernacular houses is now considered even not very hygiene, with the modern standard. So a lot of people want, if I go to one of the settlements in Sulawesi, for example, that I ask a local doctor there whether they want actually to have buildings that is specific or related to like Minahasa vernacular architecture, and they just said no, we only want something that is modern, because now we have modern buildings and we still encounter flood during the rainy season. So why should we go to the old vernacular building? So this bad image of vernacular building is because there's disconnection about the knowledge. And also, the use of previous knowledge to the modern knowledge in buildings. So the techniques involve photogrammetry, panorama photography to get the full view, and rendering and measuring, and also with LiDAR, scans using laser pulses, and also theodolite measurement and hand surveys. So these techniques, we can use all of them. We can choose to use only some of them, but the idea is to have a good documentation and help the preservation and conservation. So in talking about technology, 3D scanning technology, the 3D scanners, the one on the left-hand side image, that's the scanner, analyze object and structures and gather data about the shape, potential appearance, distance, and a lot of things, and then divide it into small or points that we collected, because this laser will be emanates to the surface, and then it reflect back the information. Maybe I'll talk about it later. So how does a 3D scanner works? The first part is data collection. We try to collect data points from the object surface, creating point cloud, and then we can combine it into meshing of the object and get the geometry, the color information, or the layers, etc. But we need to have the processing, because point cloud is raw data. We need to have a step that meshing the object and then turn it or process it into 3D models with some software applications, and then we can have like precision as it is, or maybe twinned image, and capturing details, measurements, and information about the building or the surface or the object. So application of this 3D scanning technology is already there in architectural heritage. So we can have like precision document archive, restoration and revitalization process, when we use the complete documentation drawing. And then we can even have simulation and assessment without really destroying part of the building. So the result of the documentation can give some possibilities of dealing with the condition of existing buildings, like structural strength or insertion in the old building, etc. And then we can also use the result of this documentation into development plan, and even virtual tours and promotional media. So Methods of documentation is actually combined. I divide into airborne and then ground-based, using drone to get the pictures, and also photogrammetry, and also now we have like drone with scanners, and then we can use normal camera and take a lot of picture with like 70 or 80% overlap. So the idea is to have the whole thing photographed and combine it during the processing. Yeah. And then, so these methods of documentation actually we can separate into active and passive methods, and we can also think about which one is suitable for our project or our environment and vernacular objects or houses. So there's a lot of alternative, and then maybe we should think also about time consuming or investment in skills, etc. So the choice of use, what kind of documentation techniques is determined based on the case, environmental condition, and budget. Most of the time, combining some of these methods is a good option. So with laser scanning on the right-hand side, so we have the laser lights that give back the information on the surface or on the object. And then we this kind of like information will be used, during the meshing. And then we can have this 360 information by using the scanner. So it's a more kind of like it's not really time consuming in connection to using the photogrammetry. So the application of photogrammetry and laser scanning, we can use it for information like orthophoto, heritage building information model, virtual reality, photorealistic 3D models, and then the files. The clean file can be used for 3D printing and also augmented reality. But then before we use this kind of technology, maybe we need to kind of like think about our intentions, rerouting the future, because now we have like a lot of changes in our environment. So the wisdom of the vernacular offers both humility and hope. So like vernacularizing means that we need to combine contemporary practice with vernacular sensibility, and then we get all of these innovations in our hands, and then we can share the data, the information, also not only for our project but also for public and future generation. So this is our task to root the future, because I do think that when we talk about vernacular architecture, we need to focus more on the dialogue and on also what the people really want to have, instead of doing the documentation alone. Yeah. So nevertheless, the future of sustainability lies in remembering and reimagining, and the documentation helps this process. So this is the second part, if I may say, of my presentation, which is my experience with my team. We got a grant from EWAP, Endangered Wooden Architecture Program from Oxford Brookes University and Arcadia. So what we do is we try to document Wairebo and Todo vernacular architecture in Nusa Tenggara Timur. So this is the Todo village. Yeah, it's very beautiful with this conical shaped houses, and then the houses are arranged according to the central part with this chompang here. Oops. So we call these houses Mbaruniang, a tall and round house. And this is the typical traditional houses of Manggarai Regency in Flores Island. There's slight variation in roof structure, height, and connections and details. But this is the typical ideas that the houses have 5 levels, and also with built on stilt. Yeah. And this house is not a single family houses, but usually in Werebo it's for 6 family or maybe more. And then they have this more private area, like half of the houses, the plan will be for living quarter, and the other one is for like community living quarter. They cook there and eat there. So Werebo is located in here, yeah, like 6 hours from Labuan Bajo airport, and it's known as the village in the clouds because look at it, very high above the sea level. And then this beautiful village also awarded UNESCO Asia Pacific Award in 2012 with cultural heritage conservation status as part of was that the appreciation of how the people there rebuilt their houses using local knowledge. Okay, so all of the houses are already rebuilt, but unfortunately, if we want to rebuild one house, it means that we need to collapse one house, and then during that time, like manual measurement, also with the collaboration with architect, Yuri Antar as a conservationist architects, also part of the team that merged the idea of local building knowledge with with the idea of to build one more time using local knowledge. Unfortunately, that there's no 3D scanner during that time. Maybe this is something that I think learning from this case from Werebo village, we can have like hopefully in the future combination of both technology and local wisdom. It's also the same with the village, but this one is easier to be reached. And this Todo is the center of the Manggarai kingdom and the birthplace of its first kingdom. Yeah. So unfortunately, many Todo natives move out, and then new dwellers come from Java and other islands that occupy these houses. While in Werebo, it's well preserved because of the constraint of the environment, which is very far, and we need to walk on foot for 3 hours. Yeah, doing hiking 3 hours. Okay, so in Todo, there's actually there are 9 houses, but now, but when we visit that in July 2024, only 6 of these houses remain, and then after a year, there's one more construction built. But then in July 2024, we asked whether they plan to build new house, and they said no, there's no program of that from the government. So I don't know what happened during this 1 year. But then it's good, and with this kind of new tourism, I think local people now aware of the value of the house, and they try to keep it, yeah, as part of the idea of preserving their heritage. This is the what we've done using the laser scanner. We scan all of the houses there in Werebo and Todo, and then unfortunately, since the house is very high, so the upper part details is missing, even though we use drone, but it's only from the exterior, because not all of people can have access to the upper part, which is very sacred for people of Werebo and Todo. So this is, we also do the laser scanning for the whole village. Yeah, and then do aerial photogrammetry. So we take pictures around this house with 80% of overlapping, with different kind of angles, like orthophoto with 90 degrees, 45 degree, or 135 degree. The challenge will be having the inconsistent loops, and then it's hard, to deal with the environment and also the wind there. And then here, you can imagine that we need to collect a lot of data in order to have details. And then this is terrestrial photogrammetry. We take picture of from the ground, the interior and exteriors, and have a lot of overlaps, especially at the corner of the house or details interiors. So then we used some software for data processing, and then since it's a round plan, so we have like a lot of shadows, and we need to deal with that as part of the process. But at the end, we're very happy to have these informations and 3D models of the houses and also the village. Yeah. So this is from our experience. Now if we think about vernacular heritage in global area, so we have local wisdom, we have technology, but then we also have tourism that become the largest, world largest industry that need to, we think about this heritage, tradition, and also tourism. Yeah. So this leads to tension between preserving authenticity, no matter what kind of documentation process that we have. We need to think about how to preserve, and also like local people need to live and get money, for daily life. So in this age of globalization, vernacular heritage is increasingly produced through the interplay between local identity and global market logic. Yeah, and then in relation to this global era, the tourism also transform local tradition into commodities, creating stage authenticity in the idea that it's something that it's clean, something that is safe, picturesque, and good for outsiders, is good for the living heritage. Yeah, so this is the new ideas about, try to have balance between heritage and tourism. But nevertheless, heritage may become a constructed narrative of ownership and consumptions, which is also, it's really hard to kind of like find the border between authenticity and adaptation here. So at the end of my presentation, I have this idea about vernacularizing that invite us to think about how our architectural tradition can enrich contemporary sustainability, and it's already in the past, and we need to combine both technology and local wisdom. And then we have this layer of innovation that is good for not only education but also sustainability. Documenting architectural heritage with advanced technology can help to safeguard heritage, but to me, still we need to expand research to include oral tradition, daily practices, and intangible culture, because this is the idea of heritage and culture actually. And then we need to be cautious for archival mediation risk, not to reduce heritage to mere visual data only, but then to pass down and the information also, and then to adapt to current condition, maybe like tourism. So future directions, we can help develop virtual heritage tours, collaborate with local authorities for sustainable tourism, as well as negotiating with the ongoing changes and dialogue between community and global audiences. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a fascinating and rich presentation, from Dr. Yulia. Thank you for highlighting the importance of community and implementation of heritage building regarding the sustainability. Now we have 15 minutes for a Q&A session. Please, for online participants, if you want to please. Yeah, I will try to find. So there's not yet a question in the chat box. Okay. Any question for the online participant? No one? Okay, I should ask a question for Dr. Yulia. It's quite interesting to hear your presentation, and in your experience, may you some some maybe some clues how to balance between this heritage and tourism. Yeah, because I think nowadays people in a rural further in the area, they they want people to come, but it may it may jeopardize or damage their livelihoods, their daily lives, um, regarding the buildings as well. In your perspective, what should we we balance this, so in the future that we can also we can still continue experience the the, the real or authentic buildings without losing the opportunities for global tourists to join and experience it as well. Yes, please, Dr. Yulia. I'm sorry, maybe your mic is not on yet.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's open already. The first thing that we need to do is, like local people need to be very open in the idea what they want to. I mean, it's like identities of local architecture, vernacular building, etc. It's not a constant thing. So if local people want to have something that it's different or to change, we need to hear from them first. Yeah. Documentation is only one thing, and the other one is how they live and then how they want to use their environment, etc. So with this kind of like openness, it's we no longer try to find what kind of identity that we need to give into the place, but it's automatically come up from local people. This is something that is important with the idea of their own identity. So it's easier, if they want to change something because they have kind of like hierarchy, which one is the most important value for them, for local people. And even the idea of having a kind of like museum to this vernacular architecture can come up with this new problem. Let's say that we have Taman Mini, which is very good now because like collection of traditional houses. But then this for some people, this is a good sources of traditional architecture, but for some others, it becomes a sanitized narrative of the past because there's no dynamic narrative. So this is something that we need to kind of like think about. Not to have this live environment detached, if we want to have this living heritage as part of the tourism, while in some other ideas having this open air museum is also good because maybe the idea of nostalgia is bigger there than living heritage. So I think the balance can be found by opening up, what local people want to do, what they think about the environment, and then what the expectation also with the tourists. My experience in Wairabo, they like younger people there is very well organized in receiving guests. So all of the guests will be placed in the one of the house, the guest house, and then they need to be to wait until they can meet the elderly, and then another younger people will organize that, to move to the what's that, rumah gendang in the middle. So it's a play of who have the role of doing that. So it's not only one or two people, but the good organization of this event. It's very, I'm so surprised of having that experience.
Okay, so it's work for the whole community, I think.
Yeah, that's the better part.
Yeah, we have another question from Professor Sugini. I think, yes, Professor Sugini, if you like to ask question directly, you may open the camera and Professor Sugini, would you like to?
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Yes. Can you? Yes. Yes. Thank you for Miss Yulia for your good presentation. I think it's very impressive. I want to ask you about how about intellectual property right when you take a picture. How about that? Because I think it is important.
Yes. Yeah, it's a process that we need to have consent from local people, and then sometimes it depends on like I never scan the living part, like the bedroom of the houses. So only the living part with the stove and ruang makan in the middle, yeah. So the living quarter for sleeping, I just leave it that way. And then I have also the consents. And when I talk to the elderly and the head of the village, they said that it should be from the head of the village and then the master builder, like some other tetua. So as a representation of the whole village. And that's what happened in Wairabo. But then in Todo, actually went one of the family kind of like reluctant of, because they need to work. So we need to go out from the house. I mean, I respect the way that they also convey that this is harvesting time, so we need to work inside the house also. So these kind of things that we need to deal with them at the beginning, Professor Sugini. So also with the consent, written consent or a recorded consent.
Yeah, so the key would be how open they with our being there. Yeah. Okay. Do we still have any? Okay, I think there is one. I think there's one question from Rafli Muhammad. I have a question about, is there any heritage or maybe a past building structure that doesn't contradict with current architecture in the term of environment artistic or any matter that you may tell me, or is there any history that remain buried in terms of architecture that we haven't seen that actually can be used in the current era? What do you think, Dr. Yulia? I'm sorry, your mic is not open yet.
Yeah, I'm reading it in the chat box. Yeah, thank you for the question. Okay. So the past building structure that doesn't contradict with current architecture in the term of environment, artistic. I mean, I don't really think it's a contradiction. I mean, it's a contradiction, but then when we think about changes as part of this traditional environment, so we think about this not as a contradiction, but when we have these modern ideas about the house with the modern materials, that it's a contradiction. Whenever I want to know more about this vernacular building method, so just come there as the idea that I want to learn, because what we get is actually maybe limited, but then it can open up to further innovation, even though it's only for me. So I think the first one is the mindset that a vernacular, maybe it's different with modern houses, vernacular houses, but it's not something that it's bad. The changes is part of the process, And then, is there any history that remain buried in architecture that we haven't seen that actually can be used in current era? I think that some information. For example, in building materials, like people in Wairabo, one of the tukang mentioned that they need to cut up the trees in certain time. Not because it's kind of like superstitious, but then I understand that when there's full moons, like the tree have kind of like the blood all over them. So when you cut it, so the tree will die. But then if we do that not during full moon, when we cut it, it's fine. This is something that is they don't know the reason why we shouldn't cut the tree during full moon, something like that. But then they just get information from the parents, something like that. But it's actually, it helps, to protect the forest. So this kind of thing it's maybe not new for some other people, but then for me it's something new that new science can explain about, kind of like the flow of the water inside the tree. So I have only like limited experience. I believe that it can happen, in many part of the vernacular settlement.
Yes, the knowledge is there, but we haven't heard it yet. So it's quite interesting to know that. Okay, do we have another questions right now, or maybe from the audience? Okay. Where is it? Okay, is there any questions? Please. No? Okay. Okay. I think Pak Revi wants to ask something. Yes. Pak Revi is still joining us?
Still? Yes. Thank you. Terima kasih Bu Yulia. Glad to see you again in this session. Yes, you put emphasis on the authenticity and the will of the people. It is very fascinating notion. However, this is not always the case. I mean, in certain situation, the people themselves would not like to live in their authentic houses. One day I visited a village in Bali. It is clean, well-maintained, well-preserved, but I think only 10% of the people living there. So they preserve the entire village as a relics. And they visit their village. They live around. I mean, they build houses. They don't want to live in the original house, in the authentic houses. They constructed houses like 1 kilometer away or a few kilometers away from that, so it's very reachable. But nobody wants, or very few people actually living there. But it is still active as the seat of rituals. So we know that people in Bali have so many rituals relating with, especially those related with the temple, like Odalan and Purnama and many other special rituals. So they visit. But they don't want to live there. So what do you think in this situation? I think a similar situation is also happening in Katekesu and Toraja, so because it is a site for Rambu Solo and Rambu Tuka, but not for the whole living. Yeah, some people still live there, but not in a sense of majority of them living in the village anymore. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's happened not only in Bali. I think in Katekesu,
Yeah.
like it's even hard to have this kind of ceremony. They need to be agree on the time and then
Yes.
money, etc. And then they go back to the village and do this ceremony because it's a big one in Katekesu, Rambu Solo, etc. Yeah. It's also happened that people migrate and then my experience, I'm from Batak actually. My experience with this rumah karo and sometimes rumah toba, they just leave the house as it is because they cannot have an agreement what to do with that. That's the first barrier, internal barrier that restrain like people to keep their house. And then the other one, after some generations, so people already moved, and perhaps there's also new people from other part of the area come there. So something like that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have the question. So the answer for that, but one thing that it's good that they agree on the authenticity.
Physical authenticity,
Yes, if they want to build it, let's do it with preserving the materials, put it into this mud for a couple of months, something like that. This is something that they don't want to. We should go back to that kind of state for the house, which is good then, yeah. So this is something that it's kind of like classic problem, for the houses that it's not single family houses. But then what I saw in Bunaken, the government, local government, built a house, like Minahasa house, for example, and then they have like 2 or 3 rooms. So they live in one room and 2 others, dedicated for tourists, something like that. And it works well, actually.
Nice.
Yeah. So the authenticity that they want to have, it's given by the local authority, and then it start with helping people to gain money with this kind of thing. So I think this part of negotiation is also good. Sometimes it comes from the internal agreement among the families. Sometimes it's given from the authorities. Nevertheless, what is strong enough is the idea of authenticity from the cultural sides. Maybe that's my response to the question, Pak Revi.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, interesting how to think about the preserve and how people live in it.
This is the thing, having a new life.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Pak Revi, for the questions. Do we have another questions? Okay. I think that that should be all for questions. Okay, Dr. Yulia, thank you once again for such enlightening, inspiring talk. Your work beautifully bridges our past and our sustainable. Everyone, please join me thanking Dr. Yulia. Let's give a round of applause for Dr. Yulia's presentation. Okay, thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as we near the end of the sessions, I'd like to briefly conclude this presentation from both presenter. First, we began with Prof. Micah Fisher. He unpacked the tensions and collaborations between the formal governance and local vernacular knowledge in creating flood resilience in Jakarta. We hear from him about how the families in Kampung Melayu community perceives, interprets, and responds to recurring flood events. And flood management initiatives have not only altered the material and spatial conditions of the daily life, but also reconfigured urban relations. Sustainability not from singularly determined vantage point, but to transition towards viewing situated form of constant repair that in life into the city's past, its present, and more broadly, its future becoming. Then we learn from Dr. Yulia about architecture and community-centric design are not relics of the past, but are active. Vernacular architecture embodies a local wisdom that enrich contemporary sustainable design practices. The integration of traditional values with motivation creates a balance between cultural, environmental, and technological contexts. This approach emphasizes that sustainability is not merely technical outcomes, but a reflective process rooted in community identity and indigenous knowledge. The digital documentation of architectural heritage and inclusion of intangible traditions serves as strategic efforts for preservation and intergenerational learning. Within this perspective, architecture becomes a dynamic dialogue that continuously evolves towards an adaptive, inclusive, and sustainable future. The key takeaway maybe is clear as that tackling the challenges of sustainable built environments require this very kind of interdisciplinary dialogue, one that connects ecology with architecture, policy with people, and global scales with local wisdom. So to conclude, I wish to express my deepest gratitude to our two exemplary speakers, Prof. Micah Fisher and Dr. Yulia Lukito, for the invaluable insights and for enriching the discourse at ICSBE 2025. To all our participants online, thank you for excellent questions and engaged presence throughout this session. It has been a privilege to moderate for you today. I sincerely apologize for any imperfections in my role as your moderator. With that, the session is officially concluded. I now handed the virtual stage back to Monique. Thank you once again, and wassalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Once again, a big applause for them. Well, thank you very much for our speakers, Miss Julia and Prof. Micah, for the insightful, inspiring presentation. We would like to express our gratitude for Mr. Gale for guiding discussion so early and then effectively, and all the speakers. Thank you very much for our participation, for your active engagement during the Q&A session. It was amazing session and condition. So, ladies and gentlemen, the next we would like to invite you to have photo session together again in the session 2. For participation, join us on the Zoom meeting. Right now we have 202 participants joining in this meeting. So please kindly open your camera and then give your best smile once again. And we will lead this photo session by counting 3, 2, 1. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please open your camera and give your best smile. The community can to screen capture in this meeting. Okay, we want to screen 1. We want to counting the screen 1. Please give your best smile. 3, 2, 1. In the next slide, we have counting 3, 2, 1. The third screen, we have counting 3, 2, 1. The next, 3, 2, 1. The first slide or screens, 3, 2, 1. Once again, the sixth screen, 3, 2, 1, and give applause for us. Thank you very much for participation who joined us in this evening, in this afternoon maybe. That was the opening ceremony. Once again, let's give a round of applause for us. Thank you very much. And distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Alhamdulillah, as we conclude the final discussion session, we have reached the end of today's webinar series 1, the 8th International Conference on Sustainable Built Environment. It has been fruitful discussion and productive time. We hope that you found the presentation today insightful. And now we will remind you again, don't forget to fill in the attendance link as requirement to a certificate will be sent later in each participation email. So maybe to be commit can be shared the attendance link right now. Maybe the participation can to fill in. So and then we would like to inform you that the webinar series 2, the Age International Conference Sustainable Built Environment will be held on Saturday, November 2025. So save the dates and don't miss it. And then we would like to inform you that the call of the Age International Conference on Sustainable Built Environment as shown on screen book. Maybe the comment can to share right now. And will be published by Deep Publish. The publication is free for author who contribute the ISCA 2025. Fee applies only to author who wish to receive printed copy. And the next webinar, we invite college, the host or co-host of the next seminar. And then we would like to express our gratitude once again to distinguished speakers, guests, or passion for the agenda today. Thank you very much. We will see you again maybe next week. Let us this it together by Hamdallah. Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin. On behalf of the organizing committee, I am Hassan Fadli would like to express our deepest gratitude for attention and participation. May always be blessed with health, happiness, and success in your effort. See you next week. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.